Some true crime cases and disappearances are solved within mere hours thanks to witnesses and security footage of the incident that help investigators collect all the facts and identify the culprit. But it's all too often the case that an incident occurs, and decades later, it remains a mystery due to a lack of evidence. Number 10. 25-year-old Nancy Deborah Willis originally hails from Yuma in Virginia, where she was born, back in 1961. As a child, her family moved to Ringgold in Georgia, but throughout her life, she also lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Johnson City, Tennessee, and Denver, Colorado. In December of 1986, she was married to Howard Hawk Willis, and the couple was busy building a family home in Bradley County, Tennessee, where they planned to raise their 2 children. Later that year, specifically the 23rd of December, Nancy visited her family in Gate City, Virginia for Christmas, and when it was over, she headed back to Bradley County, and for reasons unknown, she never called or spoke to them again. Howard would later tell investigators that Nancy decided to leave him, and that on the 11th of March, 1987, she boarded a bus to Chattanooga after he dropped her off, and she was never seen again. He claims to have no knowledge of what her plans were, and hence where she ended up traveling to. Sources don't state whether Nancy was ever reported as missing and whether a search was ever carried out, but it is known that her family never heard from her again and that they believe foul play is involved in her disappearance. Most people are convinced that Howard was responsible, largely thanks to the events that transpired in 2002, 16 years after Nancy mysteriously vanished. That year, newlyweds Adam and Samantha Christmer, who were from Chickamauga, Georgia, went missing while they were living with Howard's mother in Johnson City. A short while after they disappeared, 2 fishermen made a startling discovery in Washington County. While they were out at Boone Lake, they found Adam's remains in 2 separate locations and immediately contacted the authorities. Later on, more remains belonging to Adam and some belonging to Samantha were discovered in a storage unit on Buffalo Drive in Johnson City. It's unclear how investigators tied him to the crime, but Howard was arrested for ending their lives and he was put on trial. But this isn't the only crime that Howard is suspected of committing. In 2002, his stepfather Sam Thomas also went missing, and parts of his remains were found a few weeks later on Lookout Mountain in Georgia. It's strongly suspected that Howard ended his life, but no evidence has been found to definitively prove this. In 2010, Howard stood trial for the crime against Adam and Samantha, and he was found guilty, after which he was sentenced to be executed. Since Nancy has never been found, he was never charged with being involved in her disappearance, though it is suspected he's responsible for ending her life. Nancy remains missing decades after her disappearance, and investigators have released a description of her in case someone remembers any details from the time when she went missing, in hopes that they'll come forward with information that could solve her case. Anyone who has information on this case is urged to contact Bradley County Sheriff's Department at 615-476-0572. Number 9. The last time that 26-year-old Felicia Cochran was seen before disappearing was when she was heading out to visit a beauty salon, but she never made it there, never returned home, and has remained missing since. In 1992, Felicia was estranged from her husband and was living in Pell City, Alabama with her 3 children. On the 11th of July of that year, Felicia decided to go to a beauty salon in the area and asked her 10-year-old daughter if she'd like to join her. Her daughter declined the invitation for unknown reasons, and Felicia set out on her own. She was last seen by her family as she left the house at around 6 p.m. that evening. They saw her getting into a gray Nissan Sentra, and then, according to them, drove towards Birmingham, where the salon was located, and they never heard from her again. Felicia's case contains some very worrying details that are yet to be explained, decades after she disappeared. It's known that she made it to the salon since she was seen there by several witnesses, but then something strange happened. While out in the salon's parking lot, she got into an argument with someone who's never been identified by investigators. One person who saw the argument knew Felicia, and apparently the argument got so heated that they ended up dialing 911 and asked for the police to intervene. They obliged and traveled to the salon, but when they arrived, Felicia was nowhere to be found. She never returned to her family's home and was never seen or heard from again. Then, the case took another sinister turn. Just 12 hours after she was last seen at the salon, Felicia's car was found abandoned in Talladega County, Alabama, along a remote stretch of road. A search of the immediate area didn't yield any results, and no further clues were ever uncovered. The person that she was arguing with has never been identified, and many people believe that they are responsible for Felicia's disappearance, though no evidence has been found that this is the case, and it still isn't known what that argument was about. Felicia's case is a strange one for a number of reasons. Many people question why the person who dialed 911 was unable to provide investigators with a description of the person arguing with Felicia, since we don't even know whether they were male or female. Furthermore, sources never state whether a search was ever conducted, and if so, whether anything further was found. No information exists on whether or not further searches were conducted after her car was found either. Lastly, there's the fact that her family believes that they know who's responsible for her disappearance, but that person has never been named, and it isn't known whether they were ever questioned. The truth remains that no one has ever been charged with Felicia's disappearance, and her case remains unsolved decades later. People have also been left perplexed by the fact that no one was able to tell investigators what she was last seen wearing, despite being seen by her daughter and at least one witness at the salon before disappearing. Investigators have asked that anyone with information on her whereabouts contact the Pell City Police Department at 205-884-3334. Felicia's nameless case number is MP2352. Number 8. Jolene Bolerice was just 18 years old when she vanished without explanation from Swansea in New Hampshire in 1994. And to this day, no one has any idea what happened to her or where she might have ended up. Jolene spent her childhood in Swansea, where her family lived in a house on Marcy Hill Road. Her family states that she had several interests, including CB radios, softball, and music, specifically rock music, and at the time she was employed at a Bradley's department store. At the time of her disappearance, she was planning on obtaining her commercial driver's license, since she was interested in becoming a truck driver. She's described as somewhat of a wild child who had a lot of energy and who loved to laugh and have fun. On the 30th of July, 1994, Jolene left her family's home and promptly disappeared without a trace. According to some sources, her family contacted the police and she was reported as missing, but this has not been verified. Some sources also state that her family and friends started search efforts of their own, but this has not been confirmed. Whatever the case may be, weeks passed by without anyone hearing from Jolene, and eventually the months turned into years, and after decades of uncertainty as to what happened to her, no further information has ever been released. Over the years, there's been much speculation about her case. Some people believe that she was abducted by persons unknown, though no proof has ever been found to support this theory. Others believe she disappeared of her own accord after running away from home. But since she was known to have many friends and had a happy home life, many people think that this is unlikely. She'd also made plans to obtain her commercial driver's license and was excited about becoming a truck driver, so it seemed improbable that she would suddenly leave without informing her family. What strikes most people as strange about Jolene's case is the silence that surrounds it. Her case isn't very well known, and very little information has been made available regarding the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Her family was unable to tell investigators what she was wearing when they last saw her, and no one has ever come forward with any additional information. Hence, her case remains cold and seemingly will remain that way for a long time to come. By all accounts, she was well liked by everyone who knew her, and hence no one had a motive to want to harm her. Her car was later found abandoned in Keene, New Hampshire, in an area about 5 miles from her family's house. There's no information on what condition the car was in when it was found, or whether any additional clues were found when it and the surrounding area were searched. The police have never stated whether her disappearance might involve foul play either, or if they believe she decided to leave on her own. Anyone who has any information on Jolene's case, no matter how inconsequential it may seem, is asked to contact the New Hampshire State Police at 603-2 223-8494. Jolene's name as case number is MP59228. Number 7. 26-year-old Fonda Lockidge is one of several women who disappeared from the Grand Rapids area in Michigan between 1993 and 1996. And hence, there's been much speculation that she may have been a victim of a serial killer that was operating in the area at that time. When Fonda went missing in 1995, she had 2 children aged 6 and 15. Her family describes her as having a great personality and as someone who was usually the life of the party thanks to her friendly and outgoing personality. Her case contains some very strange and worrying details that have never been explained, and her family is desperate to find out what happened to her so that they can finally receive closure decades after the fact. At around 11 p.m. on the 15th of June 1995, Fonda told her family that she was heading out to a party store that was located close to her home, specifically on Oakdale and Grand Rapids Street. Strangely, she never returned home, but one of her family members later reported seeing her standing on the corner of Hall and Prospect Avenue, and they gave her $5. This is the last time that anyone had any contact with her before she inexplicably vanished. When she didn't come home in the days following this sighting, Fonda's sister contacted the police to report her as missing. During the ensuing investigation, it was discovered that she'd been making money as a street worker, and hence was seen as vulnerable thanks to events that had unfolded in the area at that time. By 1995, 16 women lost their lives in the Grand Rapids area, all of whom were either reported as missing, never to be seen again, or found deceased after being victims of foul play at the hands of an unknown assailant. All of these women had resorted to becoming street workers, and so many people believe that they were the victims of the same person, though the authorities have suggested that more than one person may have been involved in their cases, and that the attackers may have been working together. 9 of these women were last seen on Division Avenue, while 3 more were last known to be a few blocks away. Fonda was also last seen close to Division Avenue before she disappeared. Sharon Hammock's case was eventually solved when forensic genealogy tied a man named Jerry Altman to her case. He was found guilty of ending her life, and while he was on his deathbed, he made a startling confession. He told investigators that he was responsible for ending the lives of a further 11 women, and he added that 10 of those attacks were carried out in Grand Rapids. It's certain that he ended the life of Kathleen Dennis in 1995, and investigators are currently looking into the other cases to determine whether Altman was responsible. Anyone who has information on Fonda's case is asked to contact the Grand Rapids Police Department at 616-456-3400. Number 6. 66-year-old Robert Weichel disappeared during a road trip in 1996, but he hasn't been seen since, despite 7 years of investigation, and no further leads were uncovered in this case, and he's never been found. Robert originally hails from Cook County in Illinois. Later in his life, he met a woman named Joanne Tonino, and the pair got married. They eventually had a daughter, but their marriage started to sour, and before long they got divorced. Following this, Robert relocated to Burien in Seattle, where he landed a job as a metal worker until his retirement. He then spent a lot of his time traveling to car auctions, where he would buy classic cars and fix them up before selling them for a profit. Robert eventually became friends with a man named Myron Wynn after meeting him at a McDonald's in White Center, Washington, and Myron, at some point, informed him that he knew of a soldier who was selling a 1961 Ford Thunderbird in Fort Lewis, Tacoma. This sounded like another good opportunity for Robert to turn a profit, and he took an immediate interest. On the 12th of February, 1996, he visited his bank and withdrew $5,200. After speaking to the soldier on the phone, he started getting ready to travel to Fort Lewis. The two men agreed that he would collect the car and pay for it on the 22nd of February, and that morning he set out. When his neighbor hadn't heard from him for a few days, he started to worry, and he stopped by the house to check on him. There, he noticed that Robert's mail hadn't been collected, and that his car wasn't in the driveway as expected. By now, Robert's family had started to grow concerned, as he wasn't responding to texts and wasn't answering his phone. He was reported as missing by his neighbor on the 13th of March, 19 days after he disappeared. He'd grown even more concerned when he found a notification in his mail that Robert's car, a 1989 Mercedes-Benz convertible coupe, had been impounded from a park and ride lot close to his house. Investigators later stated that when they searched the car, they only found Robert's wallet inside, but it was empty otherwise and provided no clues about his movements or whereabouts. Since Robert had traveled abroad in the past, it's believed that he'd done so once again on this occasion, and foul play was ruled out. But when his house was checked, all of his clothes and belongings were found to still be there, and his bank account showed no activity after the day that he left. Then, the case took an unexpected turn. It's been assumed that Robert drove to Fort Lewis alone, but Myron Wynn's sister informed the police that Wynn had accompanied Robert to look at the car that was for sale. She added that she saw the two men together on the 23rd of February that year, when they arrived at her house before setting out on the road trip. She last saw them at around 3 p.m. on the 23rd in Mother Nature's acres, and investigators immediately questioned Wynn. He denied being with Robert, but refused to take a polygraph test despite agreeing to it at first. The case intensified in 1999 when it was discovered that Wynn had gifted his girlfriend a necklace with a unique diamond 3 years earlier, and investigators learned from Robert's family that he wore a ring with such a diamond at all times, even when he was working on his cars. Wynn claimed that while he was at a bus stop in Burien, he happened to find the diamond and thought it would make a good gift for his girlfriend. He also happened to mention that he found it at the same bus stop where Robert's car was located. Investigators were certain that Wynn had ended Robert's life during a robbery, and he was arrested. He was sentenced to 20 years behind bars at his second trial, before the first ended in a hung jury, but he has always insisted that he's innocent. Most people believe that justice was done in Robert's case, but many questions still remain since his family never learned what happened to him, and his body has never been found. The King County Sheriff's Office has asked that anyone who knows what happened to Robert contact them at 206-296-7530. Number 5. It is remarkable how many disappearances occur after someone gets into an argument with a loved one, and they're last seen walking away while upset. This is also what happened in the case of 19-year-old Gunnignut Imsakol, who remains missing to this day. When she went missing, she was living in Gaithersburg, Maryland, where she shared a house with her mother and stepfather while studying at Montgomery Community College's Rockville campus. To make money, she worked at a Red Lobster restaurant, which is situated on Shady Grove Road. In her spare time, she was known to be a good pool player and would often visit a billiards room on Chauffeur School Road, and she was well known at the Soho coffee shop that's situated on Connecticut Avenue. On the 4th of March 2002, Gunnignut had been visiting her ex-boyfriend at his apartment on Goodhurst Drive in Gaithersburg when the couple got into an argument. He later told investigators that he last saw her when she decided to leave in the midst of the argument at around 2 a.m. He assumed that she'd go straight home, but when she didn't make it back there, Gunnignut was reported as missing. Since she was last known to be at her ex's house, the area surrounding his residence was searched, but no clues were found. Her family contacted the police to report their concerns about his obsessive behavior with her. They stated that after the couple ended their relationship, he refused to leave her alone, and they suspected that he was responsible for her disappearance. At first, the ex-boyfriend, whose name has not been made public, told the police that he would cooperate with their investigation, but this soon changed when he stopped speaking to them altogether. Further searches proved futile, and Gunnignut's disappearance is still considered to be suspicious, since her bank account has seen no activity since she disappeared. It was announced in 2021 that the police received information on her case, and that this tip led them to believe she's no longer alive, but they declined to release any further information about this development. Anyone who knows where Gunnignut is or what happened to her should contact the Montgomery County Police Department at 301-279-8000. Number 4. 6 days after Robert Wayne Connor went missing, he was reported as missing by his daughter, but his case is still unsolved as his whereabouts remain unknown. Robert's disappearance is seen as very uncharacteristic, since he's usually a very reliable person, and so his family has rejected the idea that he chose to leave his hometown willingly, never to return. In July of 2003, Robert was living alone in Claremont, North Carolina, on a 20-acre piece of land that he owned. The last time that he was seen by witnesses was on that night of the 18th of July that year, when he spent some time at the Boxcar Grill and Restaurant on Oxford Street, where he was seen having a few drinks at the bar. At first, it was believed that he went home after being at the restaurant, but when he failed to respond to his daughter's calls and texts for 6 days, she reported him as missing to the Catawba Sheriff's Office on the 24th of July. When the police traveled to his house to search for him, they found a few worrying clues. His dog, a Dachshund that he loved very much, was found alone at the house, and while the dog was all right, it clearly had not been fed since Robert was last seen. His truck was found on the property, but it was parked in a different spot than usual, which caused some suspicion. His mail had been piling up since he seemingly hadn't been home to collect it, and when the house was searched, it was found that there were 14 messages left unanswered on his answering machine. Just as concerning was the fact that his firearm was missing from the spot under his couch where he kept it hidden. His daughter immediately suspected that foul play was a factor in his disappearance, and she suggested that someone had disposed of Robert's remains in Lyle Creek, which runs close by Robert's property. Investigators took her concerns to heart, and the creek was searched, but nothing was found. They also searched the rest of Robert's property and the nearby Connor Park, but again, to no avail. For the next 3 years, no progress was made in the case as no further information was found. Then, in 2006, someone called in a tip and stated that the police should search a pond situated on Bunker Hill School Road in Claremont, and this was done. But once more, no clues were uncovered. It was only then that John Dixon was questioned, since he was the last person known to be with Robert before he vanished, but this also failed to progress the case. Investigators have stated that foul play might be a factor in Robert's disappearance, but they have no definitive evidence that this is the case. Anyone who can provide investigators with new information on Robert's case is asked to contact the Catawba County Sheriff's Office at 828-465-8301. His name as case number is MP2464. Number 3. One of the few details available about the disappearance of 40-year-old William Arlen Bynum is that he was last known to be in the company of another man, and that he vanished after they left a bar in August of 2003. William is one of 4 siblings who grew up in Big Springs, Texas, and at the time of his disappearance, that was still his hometown. He was known to be a motorbike enthusiast with a special love for Harley-Davidsons, and was a member of a local motorbike club. Before he disappeared, he was employed at the Fraternal Order of Elks in Big Springs, where he was a bartender, and was well known in the area. He and his family were in the habit of keeping in touch, and he would speak to them a few times a week without fail. His father, stepmother, and siblings all still lived in Big Springs at the time. His disappearance struck his family as very strange, since he was excited about joining them on a trip to Big Bend later that year. The trip had been planned for some time, and according to them, he wouldn't have missed it for anything. On the 15th of August that year, William spent some time at the San Franciscan Bar and Grill, which is situated on 3rd Street in Big Springs. While there, he was seen talking to a man whom no one recognized, and the pair left together at around 2 a.m. after William signed his bar tab, which came to $17. What happened next remains a mystery, because William never made it home, and when his family couldn't get a hold of him the next day, they filed a missing person report. During the resulting search effort, his truck was found still parked in the bar's parking lot, but there was no sign of him in or around the vehicle. Investigators have declined to say why they did so, but in June of 2008, 5 years later, they searched a property north of Big Spring, and there they found a cache of unregistered firearms, but no further clues about William's case. It's believed that the search was related to his disappearance, but this remains speculation. Since William is a staunch family man who's failed to make contact with any of his relatives or friends, it's believed that he was a victim of foul play, but no proof of this has ever been found. It's also been suggested that the unknown man in his company that night might have had something to do with the case, but he's never been identified, and hence Williams' case remains as cold as it was 22 years ago. If you or anyone you know has any information on Williams' last movements or knows the man that he was last seen with, you're urged to contact the Big Spring Police Department at 432-264-2550. Number 2. The person or people responsible for ending the life of 74-year-old Jean Ault remain at large 23 years after the crime was committed, and her family is desperate to find out what happened to her. According to Jean's family, she had a great love for travel, and in 2002 was excited about an upcoming trip that she'd been planning. The time of the trip was near, as she'd already started packing, but then her life took an unexpected turn. By all accounts, Jean was well known and well liked in her local neighborhood of Lakewood Estates in St. Petersburg, Florida. She spent her retirement gardening, playing tennis, and was an active member of her neighborhood watch group. She would often be granted free campsite access, since she also worked as a volunteer national parks greeter, and would usually set out on trips in the camper van that she purchased shortly after her retirement. Near the end of March of 2022, she was ready to set out on a camping trip in Methany County, where she was supposed to meet up with a few of her friends. On the day that she left, she spoke to her neighbor, who later told the police that she was still loading some of her belongings into the van, and that she still needed to pick up a few things, including pasties. Her family believed that she left later that day, but she never arrived at the campsite, and the case took a sinister turn a few days later, when Jean's body was found in a set of mangroves in Coquina Key Park. Her family was left devastated. During the investigation into her case, Jean's last known movements were retraced. Inside her house, her lunch was still sitting on the table uneaten. This led the police to believe that she never headed out as planned, and that she was interrupted while she was still packing. It's been suggested that she was busy inside her garage when she was attacked by an unknown person, and that she fought back against them. Unfortunately, she lost the battle, and it's thought that she was then abducted. She was found with her hands and legs tied, and her attacker assaulted her again, likely ending her life in the process, before leaving her in the water in Coquina Key Park. A few days later, someone reported that they found Jean's camper van on 54th Avenue. It was abandoned in an apartment complex parking lot, and when it was searched, it was discovered that her Huffy brand bicycle had been stolen. Investigators questioned residents in the area and scoured through hours of CCTV footage, but they were unable to uncover any further clues. Jean's nephew then told investigators that about a year earlier, she'd confided in him that she was fearful of her neighbors. She stated that they'd been harassing her, and it had gotten to the point where she was thinking of moving. Her neighbors were questioned, but they denied any wrongdoing, and Jean's case saw no further progress. But her murder is still being investigated, and it's hoped that with emerging forensic technology and techniques, the culprit will one day be identified and brought to justice. Given the circumstances of the case, there is a likelihood that Jean knew her attacker, or the culprit knew the area very well. Anyone who has any relevant information on this case is asked to contact the St. Petersburg Police Department at 727-893-7780. Number 1. The case of the disappearance of 21-year-old Melanie Methany is one that's still spoken about in Bell, West Virginia, since it remains unsolved and her fate is still unknown today. Melanie was known to be a reserved and quiet person, and in July of 2006, she was preparing to start studying at Garnet Career Center with the aim of becoming a nurse. She was meant to start her studies on the 2nd of August that year, but never got the chance. A few months earlier, she ended her relationship with the father of 2 of her 3 children and had started dating a man named Jarrett Davis. She would often stay over at his house in the Campbell's Creek neighborhood, and the rest of the time she shared a house in Bell with her 2 brothers. Investigators have noted that about a week before she inexplicably disappeared, Melanie had gotten into an argument with a teenage boy, and believing the confrontation was over, she turned around to leave, but the boy then picked up a large rock. Luckily, one of Melanie's friends saw what was happening, and they called out to her. When she turned around, the boy got a fright and dropped the rock to the ground. This was seen as a very unusual event, since Melanie got along with everyone she knew. But it would later come to light that the teenager had stolen her van the previous week, and he'd caused some damage to it before returning it to her. When she spotted him in the street, she confronted him, and this led to the argument. On the 19th of July that year, Melanie dropped 2 of her children off at a daycare in Bell, while the others spent the day with his grandparents. She then visited a friend and stated that she was planning to visit the Career Center to collect a few transcripts, which she was supposed to take to West Virginia University. She left her friend's house, but then inexplicably vanished. She never made it to the Career Center and failed to collect her children from the daycare. When she was still nowhere to be found by 11 p.m. that night, her father contacted the police and filed a missing person report. Searches were conducted that night and over the course of the next few days, but to no avail. On the 23rd of July, a member of the public reported that they'd spotted Melanie's van in West Charleston, and it was found to have been there for days. The van yielded no clues other than fingerprints, but these all belonged to Melanie and Jared, her boyfriend. Investigators stated that they suspected foul play in Melanie's case, and that several people of interest were interviewed. Most of these people were cleared of suspicion, but a few are still under investigation, and the police have decided not to reveal their identities since Melanie's case is still open, and doing so could compromise it. Before long, hundreds of tips came in from people who believed that they'd spotted Melanie or who had their own theories about her disappearance. They were all followed up on, but failed to progress the case. Anyone who has information on her whereabouts is asked to contact the Kanawha County Sheriff's Office at 304-357-0200. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.